You know, I always intend on filming my videos in the morning when there is plenty of sunlight and not so much life noise going on, but for whatever reason, that just never really works out. Hey guys, today I thought we would finally get into talking about my top reads of 2016, and I have a relatively short list here for you guys. I have 5 books to talk about. So I've noticed that a lot of people are doing very long favorites lists for 2016, and I think that's absolutely fantastic, especially if you have read that much that you feel the need to break down your favorites by individual genre. As for me, I think it's safe to say that I read a little bit less than the average booktuber. I read 39 books in 2016. So for me, these 5 books are the cream of the crop. They're the true favorites, and they're honestly books that stuck with me throughout the rest of the year, books that I continued to think about even months after I put them down, and books that I kind of unintentionally compared everything else to. I'm not going to go too much into plot on any of these because I feel like if they've made it to this list, I've probably talked about them before, so check the description box and the cards for all relevant video and blog post links. And I will also not be putting these in any specific ranking or order because as far as I'm concerned, they're all fantastic. I don't need to pick like a definitive favorite. Also, that would just be way too hard. So instead, I'm gonna just pull books off the stack here on my lap, which I think is a very scientific way to go about it. And the first book I have here is The Vegetarian by Han Kang, which is a book that I read very early on in 2016 and that really set the tone for the rest of my reading for the year. I feel like this book was everywhere in 2016, and it is of course the story of a Korean housewife who decides to give up meat and ends up throwing her life and her marriage and her family into complete chaos. Ultimately, I think this is really a book about defying social expectations and about creating a space where you can be yourself, even if that means having to withdraw from all of your relationships and like all of normal life. 2016 really became a year of literary fiction, and specifically translated literary fiction for me, and I can honestly blame that on this book because it is a masterpiece of language. It is just lyrical and vivid and so very odd and kind of surreal in moments. Every other piece of translated fiction I read this year, I read because I was looking to kind of recapture that wow moment that I had reading this book. I genuinely wish I could read this in the original Korean, but because I can't, I'm so very grateful that Deborah Smith did an absolutely astonishing job of translating this. It doesn't feel like a translation, basically, is the best way to put it. It feels very much like a novel that was written in English because the imagery and just the descriptiveness is so intensely beautiful. I would definitely recommend this for fans of David Mitchell. I would recommend this for fans of Haruki Murakami, and if you haven't read this yet, like seriously, definitely go check this one out. Speaking of David Mitchell, the next book here on my stack is Number 9 Dream by David Mitchell. Now this was the first David Mitchell novel I have ever read, and the only one unfortunately I did get to in 2016, and it's about a young man named Eiji Miyake who moves to Tokyo from kind of a more rural town in Japan looking for his long lost father. Again, this is a book that is very much concerned with identity, and it's very concerned with claiming some sense of self, and in Eiji's case it's claiming a sense of self that is not dependent on this father figure that he's never known. Also, like The Vegetarian, this has its very odd, kind of surreal moments, and again, if you're a fan of Haruki Murakami, I would definitely suggest checking this one out. I think ultimately what ended up really blowing me away, other than this really intense thematic discussion of what does it mean to be a person with no distinct background, I think what I really was impressed by in Number 9 Dream was the fact that it really feels like Japanese fiction. It doesn't feel like a British author writing about Japan, writing a story set in Japan. It felt like legitimate Japanese fiction, and I was just so very impressed by that, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting to more of his work in 2017. And then I have a book that I was honestly really skeptical about when I first started reading it and then ended up loving, and that is Sarong Party Girls by Cheryl Lu Lien Tan. This one is set in modern day Singapore and follows a woman named Jazzy who is plotting a way to get both herself and her friends husbands before they turn the dreaded 27. If you like stories of kind of exotic nightlife and you're really just looking for something fun and upbeat and kind of crazy and something that might remind you of your college clubbing days, this is definitely something worth checking out. But for me, what really made this book so special was that it's just ultimately, if you strip all of that away, it's just a look at one woman trying to figure out what the hell it is that she wants from life. On one hand, Jazzy really just wants a bigger life, a better life, a life away from the very insular community in which her parents live. And yet at the same time, everything she's reaching for is incredibly foreign and kind of scary, and she very much feels like maybe she doesn't belong there, and so she's torn. And I feel like this was just a great depiction of like 20-something existential crisis moment. And yeah, what more is there to love? I would also say that if you're interested in kind of unique narrative voices, this is written in Singlish, which is kind of a mix of different Chinese dialects with English, and it just gives Jazzy a really unique, really distinct voice, and makes for a really fantastic audiobook as well. Then I have Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeline Tien, which was shortlisted for the 2016 Man Booker Prize. This is really the story of a single family and how the Chinese Cultural Revolution continues to affect them throughout the generations and across different continents. The kind of framework story is the story of a girl named Marie who is trying to come to terms with how much she doesn't know about her family's life in China while she herself lives in Canada. Then the deeper story is a look at her father, who was a composer who worked at the Shanghai Music Conservatory and who had this really intense relationship with another man named Sparrow. This book is just epic on so many proportions. It was one of the few books on this list that I knew was going to be a favorite before I even finished it. It's a story about friendship, it's a story about family, it's a story about love, and a story about storytelling and the power of stories. And honestly, it's just like, I don't even know if I can explain it. I've tried in both a blog post and in a video review, but I don't know if I can quite do it justice ever in trying to articulate how I feel about it. I will say that with the exception of Marie, I found all of the characters really compelling, and I really was rooting for them all, and I really felt for them. And it was one of the few books I read this year, or read in 2016, where I felt like I was on this emotional roller coaster with the characters, and I think that says something about the power of Tien's writing. And then I had to include at least one nonfiction book on this list, so I have here Spinster, Making a Life of One's Own by Kate Bollock. Now, I got this as part of the Blogging for Books program, and I was just really intrigued by what promised to be a book that looked at the modern phenomenon of women either pushing off marriage till later or not getting married at all through one woman's very specific lens. At its heart, this is really a memoir of Kate Bollock trying to figure out, kind of like Jazzy, what the heck she wants from life, whether or not she needs to be with somebody, whether or not she can be fulfilling enough for herself. And she does that examination by looking at different female writers that have influenced her over the years. This is a book that I read in about 2 sittings, mainly because I really loved Kate Bollock's writing. It was easy, it wasn't judgmental. I think a lot of feminist literature tends to have kind of this harshness to it, a little bit of an edge, but this was just very, very much read as though she was confiding in a friend. And although this is technically a memoir and I didn't know anything about Kate Bollock going into it, I can honestly say that the way she talks about these different female writers and the way she uses them as kind of a lens through which she examines her own life was just so very intriguing and so very well done that this definitely has to be my final favorite book of 2016. So these were my favorite reads of 2016, and I think they're pretty representative of my year as a whole. I read a lot of Asian female authors. I read a lot of literary fiction and quite a bit of translated fiction as well. So I feel like I had a good year, even though I didn't seem to read that much compared to a lot of people. I was very happy with the caliber of book that I read in 2016, and I'm really looking forward to what 2017 has to bring. So if you guys have read any of these books and you would like to chat about them with me in the comments, I always appreciate that. But otherwise, that's all I have for today's video. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you had a fantastic reading year in 2016 as well, and I will see you next time. Bye!